Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Destination Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Adam Stoker. We've got a fun guest for you today. His name's Lance Fite, and he's with Visit Mesa. And we'll get to Lance in just a few minutes. But as you know, I like to start with a little bit of a monologue of what I'm seeing in the destination marketing industry. And we're at an interesting time right now. And I feel like today's monologue is going to be really, really important for the industry. And I hope that everybody that listens to the show will kind of think about this and internalize it, because I think we've reached a little bit of a tipping point in the destination marketing space, and it's related to hiring. I'm looking out. You guys know I own Tourism IQ, and Tourism IQ has job openings for almost every DMO in the country at this point, and it's where a lot of people are looking for the different jobs that are available. And as I'm seeing just job postings at scale, I'm seeing people get hired at scale. I think that there's a mistake happening in the destination marketing industry when it comes to hiring. I think most destinations at this point are hiring for the wrong thing. One of the things that is that I've been working really hard to try to usher in what I believe is the next generation of the destination marketing industry that is more prepared to be consistent with the technology of today, that's more prepared for the dynamics that are happening in each individual community, more prepared for the marketing dynamics that are happening right now that we're all trying to navigate, and the change that we're all trying to navigate. One of the big changes is that when we used to hire in DMOs, we used to look at the different tactical skill sets that we needed in the organization. So if you want to get somebody in-house that owns public relations entirely, you hire a public relations person, right? When you want somebody to come in that's going to be a digital marketing professional, you're looking for the digital marketing skill set. And I've seen that trend has continued even though times have changed. And I've talked a lot about I've talked a lot about AI on the show, and now I want to talk about hiring in the AR or AI era. It used to be that the skill set was the bottleneck for people, but what's changed with AI is that a talented strategist or a knowledgeable strategist who is AI enabled has the ability to execute on almost any tactic from a marketing perspective within the organization. And that change, that evolution hasn't yet hit the way we're hiring. And I would really like to see more job postings right now that say AI engineer or AI enabled marketer. And I want to see everybody in the destination marketing industry intentionally hiring people who understand how to leverage AI to get the work of 3 historical tacticians done. And until we make that change in how we're hiring, I can promise you the adoption in your organization of AI that you need in order to be efficient in your organization is not going to happen the way you want it to happen, because we're not making the changes on the hiring front that are going to help us usher in the team that's going to be prepared for the next generation of AI. And so for DMOs specifically, they may be some of the most resource-constrained organizations out there, specifically when it comes to headcount, because there's specific legislation, there's specific restrictions of how many people a destination marketing organization in a lot of cases can hire. I know that several of my clients work with me because they are unable to add headcount to their team, and so they use an agency so that they can still get all the things done that they need to. Well, if you now have the ability in those constraints to get someone in your organization that can do the work of 3 people, imagine what you can get done in your organization at scale. But here's the thing that I think is really critical. You need someone in your organization that is the AI lead. And so the first thing that I would do if I was running a DMO right now and trying to build the team that's prepared for the future is I would designate someone in my organization who is the person who's in charge of understanding the technology enough to understand how it should be used in the organization. And if I don't have that person, that's my number one hire. That is the person that I'm bringing into the organization. That is the person who's going to run the technological implementation of AI in the organization and help us be prepared for what's coming. And there's a real caveat here that I want to make sure everybody understands. Everything that your team understands is still going to be so critical here. You need someone with local knowledge and taste and understanding of the destination. That's never going to change. And even if you hire an AI engineer, somebody that's going to be able to leverage technology to get a lot done, they're still going to have the characteristics that your team currently has, the local knowledge that's critical to marketing the destination. It's just now they're going to be proficient in AI and have the ability to scale that knowledge to execute on just about anything. And I think that's going to be really critical. So, what I would do is number one, any job posting that I put out there has to have AI proficiency as a component of the requirements of the job. Don't just ask if they use AI. You want to know how they work with it. And likely, what I would do is give, as part of the interview process, give an assignment of something you want them to execute with AI so that they can show you what their capabilities are. The tools are ready for this change in the destination marketing industry, but destination marketing organizations and the way they're currently structured are not ready. And that's going to be the bottleneck to whether or not we're going to be able to leverage the efficiency that comes with AI and actually build the relevance and protection for our role as destination marketing organizations that we need to have in order to survive and stay relevant. And so to close the monologue here, I'll just say, stop thinking about hiring in terms of the tactic that you need executed. Hire for judgment, strategy, and AI proficiency, and trust that a proficient AI strategist is going to have the ability to execute on a variety of different tactics. If you build that team, the future will show up for your organization. We used to hire hands. Now we hire minds, and they can use AI as their hands. And with that, I want to welcome in Lance Fite from Visit Mesa. Lance is the VP of Sports. And Lance, I'm really excited to have you join me today.
No, thank you so much for inviting me. I've been looking forward to this all week.
Awesome. Well, I'd love to maybe start with your reaction to my comments about hiring in the space.
Yeah, it's funny. I was originally one of those staunch disbelievers of AI, and I was one of the few on my small but mighty team that had to be kind of coaxed and convinced of it. And you couldn't be more right as far as like the hiring tactic based around AI. A lot of negativity kind of surrounded. It's taking the job of three for one person to be the master of it. But like you said, so many of us small but mighty teams, that's always like a term of endearment, right? Like, oh, they're punching way above their weight class. They're booking more than they should. Yes, but at some point that comes with a burnout and that comes with changeover. And then when you are limited by headcount, AI is that tool that I was not a believer in, that I have finally come around and say, hey, I did have to reach out to the people within my team who are the champions of AI. Like you said, we named them our AI champions, who are very savvy and very well versed in it, and they schooled all of us. They put together SOPs. They put together things that were digestible, that seemed so intimidating and intangible to this, a crotchety old man like me who was very staunchly against it. And I definitely lean into it a lot more than I ever have now.
That's great. I think one of the paradigm shifts for people as they're thinking about AI is it's not that it's going like AI is going to replace an individual person or an individual role. It's going to help the person in that role get so much more done. And once you recognize, the tipping point for me was Claude. When Claude came out, and I'm like, oh, I can just make assignments to this thing and it'll just do it, and it won't make kind of coherency mistakes, because a lot of times as humans, we have kind of, if you're building a logical train of thought, sometimes it's difficult to stay logically on that point. But AI does it without fail, right? And that doesn't mean there's not issues with AI or anything like that, but it can hold strategic coherency really, really well. And I can make assignments to it and have it get it done very quickly. And I can get so much more done as an individual. My team collectively gets so much more done. And our organization today, the output of what we're capable of doing per person compared to where we were even 6 months ago blows my mind. And I think every DMO has the opportunity to experience that.
Yeah, the pace and efficiency, like you said, I think was kind of more profound for me. That was the selling point. like you said, especially being in sales and tourism, our job is to tell a story. Well, so much of that story should be factual and data and analytics driven, when we can tend to get fluffy because it's the vision. It's the you're painting the picture. Let's sell the destination. Let's sell the vision. It needs to be backed up, and you need to keep it on track. And so much, I didn't realize that I was adding in fluff, and I was adding in these
Yep.
storytelling words. I'm like, yeah, that's great, but it is only as good as you prompt it. It's only as good as you data drive it. It's only as good as you steer it. And I think if you're, like I said, like a staunch and unbeliever that I originally was, it was my mind being more strategically placed as I was data inputting and
Yeah.
steering it. So yeah, definitely swayed me a 180 on that.
Yeah, I think I'll wrap our AI discussion with this. If you're using AI to think less, you're getting dumber, right? And you're not really leveraging it the way you should. If you're using it to think more, then you're getting smarter. And I think AI has the ability to help all of us get smarter if we're using it to make us think more.
Not as a crutch, right? Not
Right.
as definitely as a tool.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Lance, you and I had the opportunity to meet when I came down for Visit Mesa's board meeting. And full disclosure here for everybody listening, we have a project that our organizations are working on together, and I was down there for the board meeting for that. But we did a tour of Mesa as a destination. And one of the things that I knew was important to Mesa through my conversations with Mark Garcia, the CEO, I knew that sports was important. But then we went out and we toured the Arizona Athletic Grounds and went to a couple of other places within the destination. And I recognized, oh no, sports is so important to Visit Mesa. And so I want to talk about that today. But before we get too deep into it, I'd actually really like for you to share your story and background and what led you to where you are today, because your backstory is really unique and interesting.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those always been around sports, always been involved in sports, and it's kind of like as sports becomes less and less of your identity, how do you stay in the space that you know and love, and not necessarily a comfort level for me with sports, but how do I stay involved in what I love? And so having played, my whole life and basketball and football, and through high school, through college, and I was fortunate enough to play in a couple different countries out after college. And once I got out of that, I was like, okay, it's either it's grow up and be an adult, and how do I still keep my identity as a sports guy without being an athlete, which was my identity. And I got my first opportunity in hotels. It was somebody who had reached out to me. It was a family friend that was hiring for a sports and entertainment manager for Starwood Marriott Hotels, a group of hotels. And she's like, "Hey, you don't know anything about hotels. I will teach you that. That's not the big deal. You played at high school. You played in the youth sector. You played in the high school sector. You played in the college sector, and you played professionally. I need that. I need that mindset to go after your market." And so I kind of said, okay, like this is how I, found the door and opened it. And 3.5, 4 years of that, I kept progressing as, a sales manager, a regional sales manager, area sales manager of sports and entertainment specifically. I left there, took over another property for Hyatt as a director of sales and marketing, and then eventually GM. And then COVID happened. And as we all know, that paused the world, that turned everyone's professional careers upside down. And for me, I was dead and dying in those groups of hotels. Tourism was the one industry that literally overnight shut down.
Hmm.
It was it was that industry that it didn't matter how many plates it filled and how many paychecks it paid people around the world. It was the one thing overnight. Flights and hotels were closed and went to zero. So and then I actually had a sports client that I had worked with for many years throughout my hotel industry, and she had sent me the job opening for Visit Mesa, and I said, "Wow, Mesa! Like, what is a DMO? What's a CVB? I kind of know what it is." And she said, "Listen, with your background, you know enough. You've done enough on the hotel side, from the playing side. You need to be on this side because you can be the bridge that kind of gaps the two." And I threw my name in the hat, and here I am, almost 6 years later.
Awesome. One of the things that I got a kick out of as you're sharing your story is that after playing professionally overseas and everything, you finally had to say, okay, it's time to be an adult and get the next job. The thing that's so awesome about being able to play sports, and this is probably part of the reason that every or not every, but a lot of men and women really love to play sports, is you get to delay having to make that decision for a little
Sure.
while, right? So for me, it's like graduate from high school and I know that there's no potential for any kind of athletic opportunity after high school. And so it's like, okay, I had to have that decision at 18. You were in your 20s when you got to make that decision for yourself, right?
Yeah, obviously very fortunate to have the opportunities and experiences that I got after college. I definitely was not the prototypical professional player out of college. It took me another year and a half, 2 years to kind of make my body a little bit more of the professional ranks. And by no means am I even close to the NBA level, but it was great to go and experience, new countries, new cultures, and be out of my comfort zone and prolong the inevitability of growing up and getting to play my sport and be paid for it. So, yeah, I was definitely fortunate to kind of push that off further than most people get the luxury to.
That's awesome. So I had Ed Harris, and he at the time was the CEO of another organization, and he's going to kill me because I can't remember what organization he's running now. But he played in high school. He played basketball against Kobe Bryant, and he shared that story on our show. And he's like, I think that's when he realized that there wasn't really a basketball future for him when he saw the separation between him and Kobe. And so I would love to hear just briefly, and then we'll get into the reason we're having this discussion. But I'm a sports nut, so it
Yeah,
always for me. But what was the moment for you where you're like, I can't believe I'm here?
yeah, there are so many moments. And when people say, "What was your, welcome to the professional ranks moment?" There's a list of them because you don't know how close you're not to NBA players until you play against them, and you're kind of like, you're on the rise and you're feeling good and you're feeling confident and your body feels great and you're talking to different agents and you're talking like, what about this and what about this and then you go to those pro-ams, those jamborees, and you're playing with former NBA guys or current NBA guys, and you and the typical person would say, "Oh my gosh, like you're so close! Like look at you're almost made." No, you're so not close that it's not even funny. You don't understand, like, when putting it plainly, you're talking about 60,000 to $100,000 contracts, depending on how high of a league you get. They're talking about 60 million and $100 million contracts. That's the difference. That's the difference in athleticism. That's the difference in body, physical ability. That's the difference in mental ability of like just being brilliant in the game. And it has nothing to do with how big I mean, yes, they got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. But then even
Yeah.
the guys who would come in at 6 foot 6'1" that were NBA guys, you're just like, oh, it's not even close. They're just running circles around you and making it look effortless.
Oh man, wild experiences. That's really fun. I guess we probably for the this was for me, right? The sports conversation was for me. Let's do something for the audience here and let them learn a little bit about what you're up to. Visit Mesa is a great example of an organization who they're not Visit Phoenix from a budget perspective. They are definitely punching. I say they. You guys are definitely punching up above your weight class. I would say, and one of the great ways to do that for a smaller destination is to have the sports facilities to attract major sporting events and small sporting events and everything in between because they bring so many people with them. I actually did an opening monologue a few weeks ago on sports specifically and the value that sports provides to individual destinations. Visit Mesa is obviously very committed to sports as a resource to provide the revenue for the community and to continue to market the destination. So tell me just a little bit about the state of sports in Visit Mesa and the value it is to the community.
Yeah, sports is always kind of that. Regardless of what we do and how we do it, sports will always be here. I think Arizona has always had that identity of such a rich sports state. Mesa specifically, being so geographically large, had so much space for outdoor activities and for incredible venues, from our parks and rec to our aquatic centers, to an Arizona athletic grounds that we eventually got a few years ago. So um, the sports market, tourism wise, is our biggest market. We're booking anywhere between 60 and 80,000 room nights just a year, just in sports, depending on the type of year it is. Whereas other markets the size of ours, with our hotel supplies, definitely don't see the crazy, the pie share, the market share of that's so heavily reliant on sports. And I think we wear that like a point of pride. Like our Parks and Rec, are still continuing to expand parks and for our local community and for these tournaments. I think they easily could have pumped the brakes and saw, well, there's no reason to keep making these parks bigger or better or adding more parks or increasing the size of these parks or the amenities at these parks if we now have an Arizona Athletic Grounds. And they did not see it that way. They saw these are two different pools of athletes, our local communities, our little leagues, our adult leagues versus a USA whatever that needs to play at a grand scale, Olympic governing bodies that need to play at this tier with these kind of budgets. Not everyone has that budget. And I think Mesa has done an incredible job of finding that sports can be for everyone at every budget, inside, outside, in the water, out of the water, on a court, on a field. And I love that. I love that about Mesa.
Yeah, that's great. And you mentioned, I mean, you guys for your community size do a lot more sports room nights than most of your peers and competitors. There, part of that is most definitely facilities and capacity and all of that. Part of that is the sales efforts of you and your team. And so, on what end of the spectrum would you say it is? Is it that you're just an incredible sales leader, or is it the facilities and capacity? And how do you kind of manage both of those things, I would say?
Yeah, facilities definitely became our strong suit. I think, adding an Arizona Athletic Grounds about 4 or 5 years ago definitely shifted the scales in our favor, right? But then then there was this weird dichotomy of, okay, we have this demand driver here. Now the hotel supply needs to catch up with it. And to developers, it was that chicken before the egg, cart before the horse. Is how do you prove to developers that they need to develop these without knowing the exact demand need, or if that supply is even needed in that area? And then to an Arizona Athletic Grounds, when it was originally built, wasn't factoring in its proximity to anywhere and anything in Mesa. And so then, you're fighting that uphill battle to go and get these, incredible sporting events that absolutely deserve to be at a venue like that, that now you're having to jump over those hurdles of, oh, the nearest hotel is 20 minutes away, 15 minutes away, or in these other cities. And, we've been able to really manage that well. And it took, a little bit of a learning curve to use Arizona Athletic Grounds as the absolute, knockout demand driver that it is. And it is this big, shiny, pretty toy that everyone wants to play with. But so much of the rest of Mesa benefits from having an attention grabber like that. There's so many times where I've used Arizona Athletic Grounds as, let me sync my hooks into the sales pitch. And once they realize, oh, like, the dates don't work, or this doesn't work, or that doesn't work, like, that's fine. I have another 16 field, flat field, all grass facility here in Mesa that is not Arizona Athletic Grounds. Not many other locations can say that they have a Parks and Rec facility with 16 flat, all lit grass soccer fields that is not at this mega facility, or two Olympic size aquatic centers, or all of the 60, 90 dine-ins that you could run, incredible baseball events and softball events at. So we are very fortunate to have a very unique advantage in the facility space that makes my sales job much easier.
Well, we've mentioned now a few times Arizona Athletic Grounds. I think it would be really valuable to the audience to kind of hear a description and overview of what that is. I mean, I promise everybody that's listening, you won't grasp it just hearing Lance talk about it. You don't understand just how impactful and huge, for lack of a better description, it is until you actually go out there and walk it and take a look at it. So that being said, I'd love to have you give us your best shot of kind of describing what it is so that everybody that's listening can understand when we refer to that, what are we talking about? Guys, I'm pretty excited. I think I've struck a nerve with something. And, we've been talking a lot. You've heard on this show, talking about the need for people to go from tactician to strategist. That's an effort that we've been working on inside of Brand Revolt for a long time. And one of the components of that is recognizing that the traditional agency of record engagement isn't exactly what we want to be chasing, because everybody's kind of chasing the same thing. We've found a really interesting success point with conversations where I've gone to destinations and I've said, hey, what's the unique challenge that you've wanted to solve for a long time, but your AOR hasn't had the chance to get to it, or that you and your team haven't had a chance to get to it? And it's resulted in some of the most fun and intellectually challenging conversations that I've had so far. We've had one destination that's got us building a LinkedIn strategy. Another destination asked for a corporate partnerships strategy. Another one asked us to build a Reddit strategy. And in exploring these different strategies that need to be developed, especially with all the changes that are happening in the world, there's not a destination out there that doesn't have one or two things that they haven't been able to tackle yet. And for us as an organization at Brand Revolt, we really are finding a lot of joy and excitement in the opportunity to tackle some of these problems and blaze trails that haven't yet been blazed. And so I wanted to invite all of you, if there's that nagging issue, that thing you've wanted to get to for a couple of years, but you just haven't had time to solve it, or if there's something that maybe one of your directors or C-level people have been asking you to solve, but it's been on your list, you haven't been able to get to it, or maybe an agency hasn't gotten you what you needed yet with that specific thing, give us a narrow strategy project opportunity, and I'm extremely confident that my team can really help dig into that without having to turn over the keys of the entire marketing plan to this agency. Instead, we can really tackle that narrow strategy for you and make sure that it's something that's effective, solves the problem, and can be built upon for the future. If this sounds interesting to you, hit me up at adam@thebrandrevolt.com. I would love to talk to you. I know that every single destination has something like this that they just need to get to, and I think we can help. adam@thebrandrevolt.com.
Yeah, like you said, all the numbers that I'm about to say and the figures and field and court totals absolutely sound ridiculous. And I'm there almost every week, touring it and giving clients the rundown, and it still wows me when I walk out to it, because and you walk it. It's a 280 acre sports facility that has anything and everything that is the Disney of sports. If you walk through it, it has 16 all indoor basketball courts, 41 pickleball courts. I always laughed
Not
about
42. Yeah.
It's funny because I always said, why isn't it 40, an even number? It is 40 pool play courts and then one stadium court that has a dome built over it and stands as a stadium
Cool.
court. So it is 40 pool play plus a stadium court. That always bugged me on paper. Trust me. And most impressively, in the space, especially in the Southwest, it has 20 artificial turf fields, all lit, 4 grass fields, and a 2,500 capacity stadium flat grass field. 8 diamonds, so 4 softball or small format diamonds, 4 large scale diamonds, all of with temp fencing that you can kind of do with it as you will. If you combine all 3 indoor spaces, you can have 58 volleyball courts running at one time. It has a 60,000 square foot indoor convention space that is completely open and moldable to anything that you want to make it. It runs anything from UFC fights and conventions to roller derby and CrossFit events. So, again, it's one of those things where when you're walking it, you're just kind of like, wait, there's more. Wait, there's another building. There's more of the we are very, very fortunate that it's gone through what it went through, and it is what it is now.
I love that. So, how did a destination go about getting a sports facility like this?
That's a loaded question. This one was kind of my CEO prior to me joining Visit Mesa was actually working on a much smaller project, very similar to this, on like I said, a much small. That's a ridiculous scale. We were talking on a very realistic, manageable scale, and it was going to be called Mesa Plays, and that was going to be a sports facility specific to, Monday through Thursdays with the locals, but then, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, we are booking hotel based tournament business. And we had performas done, market analysis done. And then this project was kind of in the wings and being talked about and flirted with on the West Valley, on the East Valley, in another state, in this state, and kind of back and forth. And when I joined, we were reading that it is actually coming to fruition. It's at this plot of land. It's in the the vicinity of Mesa proper, that we said, hey, so it's something we didn't even have to come out of pocket or have to, but we had done so much more. And I say I'm not going to take credit for what my CEO, Mark
Sure.
Garcia, had put into it, but he had done so much work and effort and market research into it that luckily this thing just came on a much, much, much more grander scale. That was like, okay, well, if it's coming, then let's mothball, this kind of pet project of his, and it was started to be built, and it is what it is now.
Amazing. Okay, so like with that, I know that it's gone through a couple of ownership changes. Is that fair to say?
Yes. Yeah.
So now, what's the dynamic between ownership of Arizona Athletic Grounds and obviously Visit Mesa is marketing and bringing in events? How does that dynamic work between the two organizations?
Honestly, it's a great relationship to me. They're the biggest, sexiest sports complex, arguably in the nation, but definitely in the Southwest. So for me, I'm full of ammo when I get to go to a trade show and I can confidently talk about, um, one of the largest, grandest, nicest, most technologically advanced sports facility you could imagine. It's a point of pride for me, and it makes sales efforts a bit less salesy and more. Look at this thing. I'm not. You don't have to hear me talk about it. Let's just bring you out here and look at it. And what I hope is reciprocated on their end is I am an unofficial salesperson for them that they do not have to pay. My entire job is to make sure that they are full all the time because of the incremental revenues and the impacts that it brings the general Mesa area. So for them, they don't have to pay me, and I'm a business development person that is in their best interest. So to me, and I would hope that they would feel the same. And we do have an awesome relationship that we talk almost daily. It's a mutual benefit, definitely, and it's treated as such.
Did that take time to build? Like, has it always been a really tight relationship between the two organizations?
No, obviously in its infancy, and it's right when it opened, and it's in its early start, it was definitely seen as we'll let you know if we need you kind of thing. And then it was a bit brought out as if we build it, they will come, and as we know in this area, without proper market research, without proper efforts, without understanding how relationship built this industry is, that was not the case. And
Does that mean that early on it was actually pretty difficult to get that thing filled?
yes, and not because of its lack of appeal. It was simply because of lack of tact when you're going you're going a bit more for, let's get this transaction and this receipt done, go on to the next. Let's get this transaction done, go on to the next. And so much of this industry is trust and relationships. And I think a lot in this current ownership group that took it over just about 2 years ago has done a phenomenal job at correcting that error of knowing how relationship driven and how personalities are a factor, and business molds and revenue shares are a factor, but it's not transactional. And the stark contrast from where it was to where it is now is probably my favorite part of the story.
I think that's an important warning because a lot of people could listen to this and say, well, we need to build the Ohio version of Arizona Athletic Grounds or whatever. It's funny, I was on a call with an Ohio DMO this morning, so that's why Ohio came out. But it, I feel like a word of caution for everybody would be there's a lot of dynamics that need to be at play in order to decide if you have the capacity for something like this. And while yes, now years later after Arizona Athletic Grounds has been constructed, you guys are filling it consistently. everything takes build up for one. When you start something new, you have to be able to build it up. But you also, I think that partnership between the Arizona Athletic Grounds and the DMO and the work that you guys have done to build that cohesive partnership, that takes years of work to build kind of that happy medium that results in you generating the opportunities, them fulfilling on the opportunities on the facility side. And destinations need to be prepared that in year one, you're probably not going to hit the top end of your forecast of what was going to happen if you built this facility. However, if you extrapolate it over 15, 30, 40 years, to me, it kind of does feel like a no-brainer at that point.
And to your point, everyone is starting to build some version of these type of facilities. And I swear every time I'm reading LinkedIn or a sports a forecast report, yeah, a new facility like this is being built. And I don't blame them. I think private equity facilities have their merit, and I think they come with their own separate book of expectations versus like a public sector park governmental run facility. And so while caution, yes, for sure, but I think doing your research before you build something and knowing the scale that is sustainable, and if you have to do it in phases, do it in phases. If you have this grand plan and all the land, you don't have to monetize every single part of it to stay afloat. You do if you build it all in one giant mega phase. If you build it in phase one, let's get this thing dialed in. Cool, it's dialed in. 4 or 5 years later, phase two. 2 years later, phase three. And I think really, and I'm not just plugging it because I work for a DMO. Reaching out to your DMO that likely has a lot of assets and a lot of knowledge and a lot of resources that even if we don't personally have, we have the tools to go get you the market research that we may not directly have in
Yeah.
the market that doesn't have something like this. Our entire job is data and resource mining, and to share that to not only our hotel stakeholders to make them successful, but for facilities like this, that if you would to include us in the development, if you include us in the area that you're thinking of, and if you're going to include us in which sports and things to build, well, we are heavy soccer and baseball. How about we aim at this first, and then everything else kind of trickles in. The average medium household income for a volleyball parent that will spend versus another parent, those are all very tangible things that we have access to. That is our, that's our nature. That's by far our biggest business strength, is knowing things like that. So I would definitely say if you're in the developmental phase or even in the dream phase of facilities like this, is do your research, but also reach out to the people whose jobs is to research things like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a great point. One of the things that I noted in our previous conversation is, getting an MLS event, which you guys have coming, is really sexy. Getting, major college and pro sports is great. But man, from a volume perspective, it's hard to beat youth sports. And you bring in a ton of youth sports events and tournaments. How do you think about what events you target with the facilities that you have?
It's like you said it perfect. I think, having the U.S., an Olympic governing body on site is sexy. Having the NCAA championships on site is sexy. But that, you can't do that every single week in, week out, month in, month out, to keep the lights on. And a lot of people, I wouldn't say scoff at youth in amateur sports, but like the youth tourism sector is a $60 billion direct spend a year. 150 billion in overall impact. That's just youth. That's not even, we're not talking spectator sports. We're not talking professional. Like, that's just youth numbers. And so for the fact that you can book consistently a massive soccer event, and then a massive baseball event, and then a swim event, and all of these things, those are the consistent, keep the lights on, keep food on the table, make sure our hoteliers are happy, and then we'll go hook some big fish. These small fish add up.
Yeah.
And and like I said, I'll always say that Mesa definitely has an advantage facility wise. Is we're at the advantage of we don't have to be a one trick pony anymore. And we were so heavily baseball diamonds. I made a joke that Arizona is kind of like, we're kind of like Walgreens on every corner with baseball diamonds. You could throw a rock and hit another baseball diamond in any city in Arizona. We became a baseball hub for decades. And now that we are also now a soccer hub, is and now that we have an indoor structure facility like Arizona Athletic Grounds that can have indoor pickleball and indoor basketball and indoor volleyball and combines and CrossFit indoors, we're you just have to be very tactful on what you spend your time, effort, and money on, because there is so much to go around that
Yeah.
now our hotels can be selective on what they want to give their inventory to. Where in my opinion, I don't think we always had that luxury.
Yeah. Well, Lance, you and I could probably talk sports and sports marketing for a long time, but I'd love to maybe have you boil it down to, you're the VP of sports at Visit Mesa. There's there's people in your role who I know struggle to get the resources from the other side of the DMO that they need. I know there's people who are struggling to figure out how to build out the sports side of their business, or figuring out how to work better with the hotels to coordinate for these tournaments and things that are coming into town. What's your number one piece of advice in your 6 years in your role that you could provide for somebody else that's kind of trying to navigate the same things, but maybe a little earlier in the process?
Uh, I, I love that question. To me, it is over communicate, be the most open book, most transparent um, collaborator and information sharer that you can. You know, you alluded to earlier, like we are not a part of the city of Mesa. We are a contracted 501c6. So we dabble in the private sector and the public sector. Our funding comes from X, and some other funding comes from Y. And so, where there's a private equity facility like an Arizona Athletic Grounds, but of a large bulk of our business also comes from Parks and Rec, that is city government. The relationship that we have now with the city of Mesa and city of Mesa leadership is incrementally better than it ever was. We chipped away at it for many years. To not that it was ever bad. It was just okay. Tourism is always going to be here. Tourism will be here whether or not we can. And this new leadership in our city and city management is so bought in, because we've been able to tell the story over the last few years, and I'll attribute that to a large part of the leadership of my CEO, Mark Garcia, who's been a huge mentor of mine. He used to book all the sporting events in Phoenix with his time at Visit Phoenix, 14 years ago, before he joined Visit Mesa. And so when he and I get to collaborate on things sports wise, he gets it. He
Yeah.
knows how important sports is to the ecosystem. And you're going to hear me refer to this as an ecosystem, because really it is. It's these private equity facilities, my efforts liaisoning between the private equity to the public sector, from the public sector to my ends, is I am that data sharer. I'm the resource. I'm the open book. If it makes sense to you, I'll make it work. If this is important to you, I'm going to spend more time, effort, and energy on it, because everyone is going to benefit from it.
I love it. Well, Lance, this has been awesome. Really appreciate your time and sharing some of your knowledge with us. It's been really great.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much for inviting me to this. Like
Yeah.
it's kind of been I feel like it's been a long time coming, but yeah, sports is definitely an important part of my life, and it's never been more exciting here in Mesa to kind of to see it change, and to see it change for the better.
Awesome. If people want to learn more about you or the work you're doing, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
Honestly, we share a ton at visitmesa.com. We're constantly uploading our landing page, things to do, what's new, what's coming, our calendars. Our Instagram is really engaging as well, at Visit Mesa. So yeah, definitely. If you have any questions, my email is about as simple as it gets. It's lance@visitmesa.com. I would love to chat sports with people that are interested, or if maybe need a little bit of guidance. I love chairing the mentoring community for the Sports ETA, which is by far the largest association for sports and entertainment tourism. I had so many mentors throughout my 6 years in this industry, and I plan to have many more mentors. If I can share any advice to help mentor anybody else, I'd be glad to do it.
Awesome. I got to tell you, you did set a record. The word sexy has never been used more on this podcast than it was in this episode today, and I think that's pretty impressive.
When referring to the context of sports facilities, I'm okay using it.
I love it. Well, thanks again, Lance.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And thanks everybody for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, please don't forget to leave us a rating or a review. It helps us continue to bring you amazing guests like Lance. Thanks everybody, and have a great week. It's no secret that the advertising agency model is changing. I've talked about it a lot on this show, and it's no different for me and my organization. A year and a half ago, I went to my team and I said, we have got to change the way we think. And we've got to change the way we're valued for our clients. We can no longer be valued for what we do because tactics are continuing to become commoditized and even achievable by AI tools. And so we've been working really, really hard to make that conversion from tacticians to strategists, and our team's done an incredible job of that. And in that process, we've had a lot of conversations with different destinations about what type of projects they need help with. Instead of doing the whole agency of record thing where we take all your media spend and all your different tactics that you're doing, instead, we want to solve a specific strategic problem that destinations have. We've had one destination that had us build a corporate partnerships program for them, and we're in the process of that right now. We had another destination that really wanted us to build a Reddit strategy for them. We had one destination that said, we want you to solve LinkedIn for us. And we audited and built an entire LinkedIn strategy that's currently being executed on. And most recently, we had a destination reach out and say, we just need help understanding where and how we should use AI across our organization and in our marketing activities. And we're working on that, and we're getting that finalized right now with that destination. So what we're finding is that there's all these problems destinations have that historically haven't felt like my marketing agency is the person to solve this or the organization to solve this. And that's created a lane where we're working with destinations of all shapes and sizes to help them solve these narrow strategy projects that maybe have been sitting on the shelf needing to be done for a very long time. If you have a project like that you need solved, a problem you need solved that you haven't yet been able to get to, let me and my team at Brand Revolt help you solve that problem, build a strategy, and execute on the solution in such a way that it changes your organization for the better forever. We feel like we can do a fantastic job of this. We've modified our model to be able to do that, and our team of strategists does an incredible job putting these things together for our destinations that we work with, and would love the opportunity to put it together for you. So if you have something like that, hit me up, Adam@thebrandrevolt.com, and we'll get you set up.